Yeah, so we're looking at the fourth noble truth, or the fourth truth for the noble Arya beings, that is self-evident to a Buddha, self-evident to those who have direct perceptual realization of emptiness. So there's true paths. And so when we think of true paths, we have to look at, well, what is a true path? Because we can be led down the wrong path. We've probably been led down many wrong paths in life, right? Let alone previous lifetimes. But, you know, having, as we do, check up the teachings, the teacher, and so forth to see what is authentic. And of course, what is authentic is partially hidden because we don't have the realizations of an Arya being. And so there are some that we have to take on faith in terms of scriptural reference, but others that we can tell through our own experience. But I think in unpacking, particularly this presentation on the path, so there's a sort of common presentation on unpacking the path to enlightenment, and then we could say Mahayana, and when we look in the Tibetan tradition, the Lam Rim coming from Lama Atisha, the path to enlightenment and being passed down, and having the great, very skillful presentation of that through Lama Tsongkhapa, that and being passed on to us. That through the Lam Rim, the graduated path to enlightenment, we might say is an uncommon presentation in the terms that it's not taught in that presentation in all Buddhist traditions. It is taught in all Tibetan Buddhist traditions, like the Lam Rim presentation, which is what we're following in terms of in discovering Buddhism. But the general presentation is on the Eightfold Noble Path. And so this is why I wanted to just have the Dharma Chakra, which I think you're all familiar with, the 8 spokes of the wheel. So this represents we talk about the turning of the wheel of Dharma. So it represents that, bringing the teachings into this world system. And this one, I mean, they also refer to the 1,000-spoke wheel. But in general, we have these 8 spokes, which is exactly this, the summary of these 8, shall we say, 8, well, it's not just practices, but these 8 trainings that will get us to enlightenment, will get us to our goal, whether those for self-liberation or those for enlightenment. So this is commonly taught in terms of across the board, across all traditions. So I used to, when at Chenrezig Institute, we would get the groups of school children, really children, because I think they were about year 11, young people coming, and with their question sheets, and they always had the 4 Noble Truths and the Eightfold Noble Path. They always had that as part of their curriculum on Buddhism. So that's understood across the board. So comment coming up.
Oh, I was just thinking, because I actually saw some of those groups, and was it part of their religious education?
Religious studies, yeah. There's I think anyway, one of the, it might be an elective, I'm not sure, these days, and it probably varies state to state. Yeah, religious studies. So I think it's an elective, I'm not sure. Once you're in a senior school. So anyway, they were all very interested because they do, or comparative religions, they do study into all. Okay, so the quote from the Buddha here, from the discourse of turning the wheel of Dharma, the initial sutra on the first turning of the wheel of Dharma. And this monks, remembering he was talking to monks and Arya beings at the time, is the noble truth of the way of practice. So how to practice, leading to the cessation of suffering. So we've, last time we were looking at the wheel of life and the whole cycle and how we cycle through and so forth again and again and again and again. But then there was the Buddha at the top pointing to the way out. And so this is the way out. So generally, sometimes the translations are a bit different. This eightfold, precisely this eightfold noble path, or eightfold path, noble eightfold path. Any combination of those words. And again, noble meaning those who have a direct perceptual realization of emptiness. So if you want those qualities, follow this. Because you might think, well, I'm not there yet, so maybe I shouldn't do these things yet. But no. But no, this is what we're doing. So it's established in this way: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So that's generally the 8 that are talked about, as I said. So when we hear this word right, it's not, well, I guess it is right in terms of right versus wrong in one way, of not following a wrong path. But on the other hand, we're talking about right intentional. We say correct your motivation, so that, which is intention. So that's saying it's in sync with reality, as the Buddha and Arya beings have understood reality of existence. I like to think of it in sync with reality. So the intentions that are in sync with reality. So we have, I'll start with right view. So the right view is the huge, huge topic of the philosophical view. And that includes an understanding of impermanence, of karma, and so forth. And also understanding of selflessness or emptiness. So initially it says here, the right view is the knowledge of the Four Noble Truths. So we can say, oh yes, I know the Four Noble Truths. I can list, noble truth of suffering, noble truth of causes or origin, noble truth of cessation, and noble truth of path. And that's as far as I can go. So might I suggest that this right view is, having unpacked that a bit more deeply, that you've got an understanding of, a deeper understanding. It might be still intellectual understanding, cognitive understanding, but the more that we meditate and practice on the Four Noble Truths and the components and so forth, the whole of the Lam Rim, as we know, then the more our knowledge becomes experiential. And that's what so the right view would be the one that, for Noble Arya being, is the one that's the experiential knowledge, that it's so self-evident. You don't have to think about, now, what was number 1 and what was number 3 and what were all the bits in between. So we have the 4 different aspects of the First Noble Truth of suffering, impermanent suffering, selfless and empty, and then we unpack what all those are. So there are layers and layers and layers of all of this. And we looked at that in the First Noble Truth in terms of, well, there's a 3, the 6, the 8, then there's a whole cycle of samsara, the 12. There's a lot. Okay, so so on one level, we can say it's okay, having had the teachings at least once, twice, whatever, on the Four Noble Truths, I've got some working hypothesis about it, got some understanding about it. But also the right view, really what we're aiming for, is the philosophical view of emptiness, we would say, particularly in the tradition of Lama Tsongkhapa, which we are. So why selflessness and emptiness? Because there's also, like, we would say, what was called lower schools. So today we could say, following a Theravadan tradition, that they fully embrace, fully go for selflessness of persons. me, myself, I. What they don't fully, to the extent of within the tradition of Lama Tsongkhapa, or Nagarjuna, actually, the middle way consequence school, you don't need to know those terms, of emptiness, of inherent existence, of both self of persons and of phenomena, of everything. That, what does that mean? Everything's interdependent. Basically, causes and conditions made up of its parts, but the most subtle view you're coming along and merely imputed, merely labelled by the mind. Now, we're going to be spending a whole module on this emptiness thing. So just knowing there are degrees of understanding in different Buddhist traditions about what that means. You know, these terms, what it actually means. Which is then, what it actually means is what is then the ultimate truth. So the right view is in relation to the ultimate truth. But if you look at everything being dependent arising, that's conventional truth. Everything comes into existence. Everything goes out of existence. What causes it to come into existence? A whole bunch of stuff. What causes it to go out of existence? The fact that it came into existence there's a lot of stuff there to unpack. So that you could say is a conventional truth. And its lack of inherent existence, meaning nothing from its own side, is permanent, unchanging, unitary, independent, so forth. It doesn't mean things don't exist. It means they don't exist how our minds do. So we want our view to get more and more in sync with reality. It's clear? Clear like that. Well, that's why there's another module coming with that. Well, we can say, yeah, right now I'm muddy confused. Yeah. And that is the mind of ignorance, right? So we're propelled by that in everything we do.
So ignorance, is the antidote to ignorance then the wisdom realising emptiness?
Yeah, realising the correct view, the right view, emptiness, synonymous. Yeah. And so we don't have to go, oh, I've got to realise emptiness of cup, and then I've got to realise emptiness of computer, and then you would have to go one by one with everything that exists, right? Once we realise that, we realise it, but realising that takes at least a countless great eon. And we don't know where we are in that countless great eon. We've got a precious human rebirth, so at least we're somewhere along the way. Yeah, so the realization of that cuts the ridge of samsara, like we were looking last week, that ignorance, the blind person, just going, not having a clue where we're going. So that's generally the analogy of samsaric existence, a suffering existence. Keep in mind, it's not a place, it's a state of mind. So when we realize emptiness, we can do that on this very body. And that's why we have beings who have realized emptiness. Mind you, they don't tell you that. So it's a bit tricky. Who are in human form, thankfully, because they give us the teachings. Yeah, we're okay with that? So far, so good. Anyway, they always put this one first, and you think, oh, but that's the hardest one. Why is it first? Because it's the whole framework. That's why. So within that framework, the right intention is an intention that's in sync with that idea of emptiness of self-existence, emptiness. Well, basically turning away from this grasping mind, grasping at this me that we talk about. I mean, I think that's the easiest to unpack of this sense of me, because I know that my sense of me is different to everybody else's sense out there of me, and vice versa, if we have conversations about that. And so there's nothing solid that me, because if there was that solid me, it would be the same, regardless. So that's just So the right intention, or we say, like, we correct our motivation, set our motivation. We've talked about motivation before, setting our mind in that positive direction. So not only just being in a positive direction, but a direction that is an antidote to the three poisons. So in that, wheel of life where we saw the pig, the bird, and the snake, these poisonous minds, they're called the three poisons because they poison our minds. So they, and we know what poison does. Makes everything not what it is. And so, and they make us poisonous because then if they are left unchecked, they make us engage in like negative emotion, destructive emotions, speech, actions as a result, which are also poisoned. So, so the intention, first of all, of non-attachment. So we talk about this desire realm, that this grasping, wanting, craving, grasping. We looked at that in number 8 and 9 in the 12 links. And so this one is one that has cut across that. So non-attachment is not just not doing that, but I like to think that we've worked on our mind to relinquish attachment. So it's not just, oh, I will refrain from going down that aisle in the supermarket. Good. Good practice. Or I'll go into the shopping centre, as Lama Zopa says, and observe that my mind goes towards it, but my body doesn't follow and I don't pick it up and pay for it, etc. So it's going beyond that to saying, hang a minute, I'm cutting through that very attachment in the first place. I'm observing my mind that goes like that and I'm relinquishing. So that's the mind of non-attachment. Ultimately, that mind of non-attachment means, sort of sounds like it might be boring, that you have no desire whatsoever, but you do have enjoyment. In fact, you have more enjoyment because you're not upset if you don't have what it is, if the chocolate runs out, as Lama Yeshe said. We don't get upset. It's just like, oh, well, there must be carrots. Not quite the same, but so, yeah, that mind that says, it's okay, there's a lot of other foods to choose from. And that it's not like my whole day's been ruined because there's no chocolate. Yeah, so that mind of non-attachment is a freedom to enjoy. And then if it's not there, you don't miss. So it's a mind of contentment. We're content. That's often said to be the one against desire, is a mind of contentment. So often it's said when we want to go and do retreat, this is one of the prerequisites to have a mind of contentment. I'm talking about solo retreats where you're not catered for in a sort of Hilton style retreat. Where I always think of my friend who every day for a year had lentils and rice. Don't bother, just have something to eat that's nutritious, gives you protein and whatever. Lentils and rice was her staple. Far out, that's great.
No, you don't have to impute anything on food, just a brine.
It's just,
and you nourish.
Yeah, you've got your nourishment, and it's just like, I'm done. Right. So we can see we're all works in progress on this one. And that's just the attachment to food. But it's a good one to work with. It's a very good one to work with. So enjoying when it's there, but not needing it to be the source of my pleasure, my happiness, and so forth. So yeah, mind of contentment, mind of non-attachment, happiness, basically. And the intention of non-ill will, generally we talk about kindness rather than having a revengeful mind, hatred, anger, aversion. We'll talk about what the opposite of that is love, is patience, is kindness, not having ill will towards others, but having, may you be well, may you be happy, may you, everything you wish for come about, and so forth. So, and being kind in the ways we relate to others. So when it's non-ill will, then it's the absence of that, even in our mental continuum, that there's no way that our mind could ever arise anger. Right. That's what we're working towards. No way it could ever arise, even the slightest irritation. So in the meantime, we practice. We apply those antidotes. And the tension of harmlessness, because you could say all the Buddhist teachings boil down to this, the correct view, the philosophical view, and the most of dependent arising, which was unique to the Buddha. And the teachings were unique to the Buddha. And then the intention of harmlessness, which, in India, Gandhi made very much part of his message to India. Do no harm. And we know that that's in our practice, the intention to do no harm. So we're intending to do no harm. It's not saying we're not doing harm. It's saying we're intending to do no harm. So that harmlessness also, the opposite of doing harm is having compassion, love, caring, concern for others, and so forth. And then eventually we are in that situation where we do no harm to others, but not yet. Not yet while we have a body such as this. Isn't it? It's inevitable that we do harm to sentient beings. Most of the time we're not aware of it because they're so microscopic, the ones that we harm. I mean, we know about harm to other humans and many animals, and let's just say also the environment of the whole world. But then you unpack more and more subtle levels. In the meantime, we're always setting our motivation for the day. Everything I think, do, and say today be of benefit to others. Remind myself again and again and again, because that's a big practice. So that's the second one. Yeah. A right speech. So we can see the right view and the right intention are trainings of the mind. The next three are trainings in terms of the body, well, speech and action. So right speech, or speech that is all of those things, compassionate, loving, kind, and so forth, harmonious, as we have looked at when we looked at 10 non-virtues. Right speech, the absence of false speech. So the absence of those in our speech. No lying, or even perhaps exaggerating, because while some exaggeration we know when, because it's saying the one of lying is to deceive someone else and they are deceived. They're taken in by what you say and you've intended to do that and that has happened. So that's the full karma of that. But I also think that refraining from things like exaggerating our speech helps us more develop wisdom, because we're getting more precise, we're getting more correct in what we say. Anyway, something to think about. It makes us be careful. And then, of course, not the outright lie, of course. And so being as truthful, but kindly truthful, not brutally truthful. I just thought I should tell you something, not brutal. Because I'm not even sure brutal truth is actually truth, really. And what is truth? We can have a whole debate about that. Yes, it could be one person. That's what I mean. It could be one person. Yeah. So refraining from malicious speech. Sometimes it says libelous, or that's the divisive speech, the malicious speech, backstabbing. What else? Malicious speech. Just being downright nasty. Which comes along the next one, harsh speech. So we usually use the sort of being abusive, being very hard on people in our speech. It's got a sort of hard edge to it. So refraining from that, and idle chitter-chatter. So the idle chitter-chatter, the gossip, which could be malicious gossip. So we could mix these things up.
So is malicious speech speaking ill
Of another person.
Whereas harsh speech is speaking
Being abusively
to that
towards the person. Yeah, because the malicious speech, because it's always said, like in the mind training, it says to always never speak of others' faults, like speak of your own faults, but not of others' faults. Always speak of their good qualities. So, yeah, the malicious is yeah. And that's why that can very much fall into the idle chitter-chatter. Idle chitter-chatter is one thing, but gossip, that can be malicious gossip. And we know that there's a lot of malicious gossip. Yeah.
It's malicious and harsh speech.
I would apply it to oneself as well. I mean, I wouldn't apply it to oneself. I mean, it applies to both, because we can do all of these things towards ourselves. And so this is also part of that recognition that, oh, very hard on myself. I'm very, and we're very hard on ourselves. You know, we can be beating ourselves up a lot, more so than others, right? So this is cause, and we check up because that's a cause of our suffering. We notice that, right? What happens as a result? We feel bad, isn't it? So that's a cause of suffering, and we don't realize what it is. But we are.
In the sense of a protest, people have a strong opinion.
Yes.
Sometimes the speech that comes out, whatever emotion, can be quite brutal in the situation. And people respond to that by creating even more brutal speech.
Correct.
And
it's a slippery slope.
And the message, the intention behind the message maybe is
So protest is one thing. So, social justice, protest, naming bad behaviour or injustice, all of that, go on the protest. But when it becomes brutal, it's sort of like you do yourself a disservice in the whole thing. You know, the media picks up on that, and you know, and it's all like, you know, whether brutal speech or brutal actions, because what might come from a passion of social justice is that tipping point into anger, and then it becomes hatred, and then you know, and if you've got a critical mass of people doing exactly that, then that's why we have, you know, either the brutal speech or sometimes the placards are just quite awful. So speech also includes things like placards, emails, texts, all forms of speech as such. And there's a lot of that in the world. And then, as you're saying, I think, is that it sort of becomes, well, whether it becomes a norm or not, but it becomes, you get so caught up, like so-and-so said, so it's okay to say, and it becomes normalised. I do believe it becomes normalised. It's okay to talk like that. So again, we're really going against that. And in this time in the world where that is so prevalent, it's so easy, it's everywhere, including the media, then it takes our strong determination to refrain from it. It might be in our families, it might be in the media, it might be in, you know, our workplace, many, just generally in society, on social media, etc. So what would be the opposite? Post all our beautiful messages. I was looking yesterday at a friend's Facebook page. I always think that if you get onto Facebook, it's like you go down the, rabbit hole. Because then I look at that one and that one. Oh, they're beautiful messages. Oh, I like that quote. And so then I'm looking at other quotes I like and other quotes I like. But they're the positive messages. And so using that platform or any platform for sending positive messages. It's a good thing, and that's doing the opposite. That's being very kind and harmonious. Let's say hopeful in our speech, reminding people of values that are values to uphold. So our speech in that way, while engaging in right speech, can be very powerful, intentionally powerful speech, not loud and raucous, but intentionally powerful. Like I was talking to this, we've got the thing that the opposite of jealousy is rejoicing. So, when people say to me, I'm jealous of them, go, no, you're not, you're rejoicing. I may not say it to a non-Buddhist because they may not understand. And that I said it to a monk. And I said, no, you're not jealous, you're rejoicing. He says, no, I'm jealous. And I said, no, you're not, you're rejoicing. No, I'm jealous.
So he thought maybe that he's being honest with himself by
possibly, yes. Yeah, possibly. Yeah, possibly. He was being honest. I'm not rejoicing, I'm being honest. I'm jealous. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So, our skill, what we think is skillful speech may not be skillful to others, but maybe something went in there. I live in my, it was a good reminder to me anyway. It worked for me. So, of course, it's engaged. Right speech is not just abstaining from those, but engaging in the opposite of, being truthful, being precise, being kind in our speech, being harmonious, bringing people together, inclusive. And that can be, like I always think about this inclusivity in terms of with a group of people, and say somebody's not engaged in the conversation, or somebody's dominating, and just taking that opportunity to see if you can include someone else in the conversation. They might be happy, they might be the sort of person, like I used to be like this all the time. Believe it or not. Was happy to just sit there and let other people chat and so forth and not say a word. Until a friend of mine said, we just don't think you're interested because you don't say anything. I thought, well, that's not good, is it? So how we're perceived is not necessarily, whereas I was probably sitting there going, I don't know what I can contribute, my neurotic side. Whereas, just in that instance, I can remember, I think it was when I was at dinner parties with friends. Anyway, clearly I've got over but I did. Maybe it's something when you're younger, you've got to say the right thing. That's not what this is. This is not about, have I said the right thing? And things like asking questions. And I was like, this is a stupid question. Already you've told yourself almost that you're stupid. And it's just like, no, it's not. It's a question. It's neither stupid nor not stupid. It's a question. You will have questions. Any questions? Yeah. So right action then. Right action, as we have already looked at in the refuge module, we've looked at subsequently, what is abstaining, of course, from harmful action, such as taking life intentionally. And here it says destruction of life, because I think destruction of life is not just killing. It might be poisoning. It might be giving people bad medicine, or using, or ineffective, but you'd have to know it is, not just you're an alternative therapist and you know that this works and I'm not meaning that. So we look at anything that would destroy life, which can include habitats in the environment, isn't it? That destroys habitats of beings, and with intentionality. That's why, we keep praying for these wasps here and next door. I haven't seen any lately. I don't know what
They're still in the warm room.
they're still, yeah, you can sort of get used to them flying around. They haven't bit us yet so far. We haven't bit them. We learn to cohabitate. But it is a worry, you know, if it's, if they say, we have to get rid of that waspness. And I think you've got to do your research and say, well, if the wasps aren't there in the nest and we destroy the nest when it's empty, is that okay? Because they can rebuild somewhere else. I don't know the answer to that. I'm just saying we do our research and find out. Because it's like somebody says, oh, you're not at home, I'll come and burn your house down. You weren't there. If we look at it by analogy. Anyway, I'm not sure if it's, apparently it's not dangerous to the wasp. I thought they were getting munched up in the aircon, but apparently they're not, they're outside.
I imagine they're attached to the inside of the cover.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking, oh no, I'm not using the aircon if they're going to get munched up. But apparently that is not the case. So they seem to be haven't caused any problems. But we have that mind that says, I've got to get rid of, and there might be situations where we do have to get rid of. So I've been in the Dharma Center where we had to get rid of the termites because the floor was like this. Couldn't put up the table. It's straight. And that's pretty distressing because then, you know, yes, you do all the prayers, you mitigate as much as you can, but you know in the end of the day that they're going to get killed. I was thinking about that with one of our friends who he works at in the cattle industry with the females, the cows. I'm sorry, females are cows. The cows that are past their use by as dairy cows, and so they're going to be killed. But then myself and prior to that, Venerable Chökyi, when she was, would when he does himself, does prayers, does mantras for them. I mean, it's sort of like he's not doing the killing, it's going to happen anyway. And his bosses know this is what, his colleagues all know this is what he's doing. And they are quite okay with that. You know? So I thought, well, because his teacher, because he said to his teacher, should I change my job? Actually, it comes in the right livelihood. He said, no, you stay doing it. And you think, well, maybe his teacher can see there is benefit to those beings as well as the fact that he seems to be able to take time off, except for the whatever busy seasons, which I think round about now, and go and do retreats and go and do Dharma studies and so forth, so that, you know, that you can see there's many multiple layers. But he's not the one doing the killing, so you've got to think that. But it's a bit awkward to say, well, I'm in this industry where I know this is what happens. So there are, you know, that's more related to right livelihood. So right action, so taking life, taking what's not given, as we know, stealing, and so abandoning those and engaging in the opposites, engaging in saving lives wherever possible. So every time I've got more confidence now because I've saved a few more insects from drowning on tissue, like using the tissue and I just laugh when I see them moving. I think, I've really killed this one. And then they start moving and get them into the dry tissue. And then eventually take them outside or they fly off, whatever. Saving lives can give us great joy in the teeniest, tiniest little life form. Or to do what we can to, like at the moment, what tree is going to be cut down in the southwest? No, it's a different tree. Not the ones in the park. Another tree. And it was and there's protests, part of which is about the habitat of the beings who earned that tree. It's in well, maybe not protected. Anyway, they're wanting to improve the road and then got all these trees marked and people, I can't remember, I only just read about this morning, I've gotten already. But it happens a lot, doesn't it? So
We're talking about the habitats.
the habitat, it's destroying the habitat, yeah.
So would you just do your best to relocate?
If you can, enable them
That's-
to relocate. I mean, it's interesting if you look historically with Indigenous practices of bush fire stick burns, then they burn off one area, but they knew that if we burn off this area, all those insects and animals will relocate over there. So I provided that space for them. But to prevent, this was fire stick management, yeah, bushfire management, basically, with a cool burn, and so they had it managed that all that mob would go over there and they'd burn over this patch, right? And so they controlled the burn so that it wasn't just, oh, well, each for their own. So there are techniques and skills that have been learned over tens of thousands of years that can help minimise. So yes, if we're able to relocate, if we're able to anyway, minimise the harm done. Oh, yes.
Why am I? I'm kind of killing, take the karma on myself, rather than make another person kill in my name and incurring the karma of killing for them.
Yeah.
Why, for me, that's worse. For me, it will be less bad to kill the cow myself and take the karma on myself rather than somebody else.
Yeah. So this scenario wasn't about making someone else do it. It was about working in an industry that does it.
Just in general.
Yeah. So that, anyway, just to clarify, that example was about that. But in general, yes, if it was about killing, if I'm getting somebody else to do the killing, I get the kind of killing plus of causing someone else to kill. Right? And so I get that heaviness of negative karma. But plus what situation am I causing for that person? And okay, we can negotiate that around cows and things. But what about the termites? What about when the termite person comes in to kill? Now, you might say, well, that's their job. That's what they've signed up for. But there is always those dilemmas. It's a tricky scenario. So then what we need to do is to minimize the killing or minimize the damage from that, at least do prayers and practices for those beings that are going to be killed, that we're not rejoicing in them being killed and so forth. But yeah, it's a huge dilemma. It's massive, isn't it? So yeah, then the taking what's not given is about don't steal, of course, but this works on the mind of attachment. If it's not given to me, if it's not mine, hands off. Say it's common property, And so I would even have this dilemma that I remember being when I was at Vajrayana Institute, and I asked one of my teachers about the fact of, because, like here, so I was living there, working there in the same building, and, you have your tea and coffee and everything else like that. And I would be like, well, if I go, because, all the residents would help themselves to the tea and coffee provided as part of the centre facilities. And I just think, well, if I'm not effectively on duty, then not mine to touch. Anyway, one of my teachers said, oh, good heavens, you're a nun, you're 24/7 working for the centre. But I do remember, like from Geshe Tashi Sering and from Wanzoto Rinpoche, talking about, not always, like I think Venerable Roger mentioned, when they go to different centres, it wouldn't, would only, like say, tea, you want a tea, would never take it from the centre supply, would always purchase it from the shop, things like that.
That's what I'm assuming that is bad.
Yeah, but if it's offered, that's a different thing. But if it's not offered, then it's not yours.
I have two examples that felt like hard to take people to. One, first one is I have a friend, she's going around and she looks recycling things. She picks up all the cans.
Oh, it makes the money from the cans.
Yeah,
Oh,
but what her main intention is the environment. Like,
Yeah.
when it looks at the environment, she also requires great to get some extra money. The second one is the practice of dumpster diving. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Oh, where people are looking for food or so forth. Yeah.
That's their land
Mm.
and the legality can come around that. Either of them, these would consider sometimes trash.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Because people put things in the trash they're saying, I no longer want. It's in the public, I mean, because it's like we have those times when we have the council pickups and people go around collecting furniture. So there is a sort of, I guess, agreed convention that this is now public property. It's no longer mine. I've put it out. I don't want it. If somebody else, in fact, when I moved out of my house in Sydney, when I was moving into the centre, the things that, because first of all, I had my friends come and take whatever they wanted, because I was living in a terrace house and moving into a room. And so I was like, take whatever you want. And that happened a bit, and quite a bit was taken. And then I think I got one of the charities to come and take what they wanted, but believe it or not, they reject things as well. And so, and then I put the rest on the street to be taken, because it saved me from having to work out how to dispose them. Unfortunately, it all got taken and didn't have to worry too much about disposing. I did put a lot in the bins. That, believe me, no, but anyone would have been disappointed if the dumpster dived into those. Just in case they did. But yeah, we do, I guess we do have the thing. I don't know if that's, yeah, it'd be a quandary. I would find that a quandary to say, well, there's not like up here with the woman with the bins out.
Yeah,
but I think that's,
signs up.
she's got signs up, yeah.
Really often.
Yeah,
is used.
so that's clear. But we do have this convention that if it's out on the curb, it's public property. So, which is tricky, because then in the parks and things, it's public property in a way to be enjoyed in the park, the flowers and this and that. A lot of money goes into caring for them. So there are ones that we have to say now, which, yeah, and for myself, well, hey, look, to say I'm not going to be dumpster diving is one thing, but if it's only source of food, I mean, if I saw someone dumpster diving, I'd maybe say, I heard about food bank or places. Right. So their motivation's good. It's to distribute to others. Yeah, yeah. Well, because I know they do have such thing as, I mean, from landfill, my understanding is the scavenger licenses. I don't know if that still exists, where people have a license to go through, and I don't know if that still exists here.
I think they've formalised it. I know in Canberra, for instance, they let it out as a contract, and they're the people who run the shop at the tip.
Oh, okay.
So there's
different ways they do. But if something like that was in place and you just decided to do off your own bat, that would be taking what's
Yeah,
not given, because there's an agreement that it goes. Yeah, so I think there are dilemmas, around that. And it all comes back to, in the end of the day, what my motivation is. Now, I'm not going to say go and assassinate someone because your motivation was to stop the world being, subject to their warring and so forth. So yes, it's motivation, but there's also staying within the law. So I think my answer would be check what the law says, and if there's not a legal thing around that, or what the council bylaws say, probably it's more council bylaws. It's a dilemma, isn't it? I mean, yeah, we say bring the bottles here, and we take them, and the money goes into back into so
So if it's not 100% clear, could you not then say, oh, is it okay if I dive into your dumpster?
well, then that would be clear. Yeah.
So then you're asking, but it's not freely offered.
Offered,
So
yeah.
you're asking for something.
Yeah.
In terms of taking what's not given, it's not given.
Mm.
But does the asking kind of negate that?
If the person says go for
Says
it,
go for it.
then you've got permission.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very different situation. Yeah, it's quite a tricky one, because I think, they get them from industries. I was thinking all those reverse, is it all reverse? What is it?
Garbage.
No, yeah, reverse cycle. All the fashion stuff, and
Oh,
all of that. There's a whole system set up in place there. Did you have a comment?
I was thinking about upcycling, that people
Yeah,
take something that was on the verge and they make money out of it now, maybe they make money out of themselves or for other people, but that
Yeah.
has to be clearly stated
yeah.
by them. Or what
So
they
I think
achieve.
it would be check with the council in general what is accepted practice.
Always had it where they would put stuff out on our verge and people would, like, that's the sign, it's free for
Yeah.
everyone to take. But then some people come and ask you, is it okay if I take
Yeah,
it? Whatever.
yeah.
And you go, sure, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
They would, like, you'd feel good that they've asked you,
Yeah.
they'd feel good
Yeah.
because they've asked, and it's sort of like a nice
clean, clear.
transaction
That's nice,
sort of
clean,
thing.
clear. Yeah.
So taking-
Or you leave a sign on things if you're putting them out, and you
Yeah.
say, please take me.
I saw
I'm yours.
I saw the one the other day on Canning Highway down to Fremantle's, a recliner with a sign saying, please take
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
Because most people, when they put things out, they do want someone to take it away.
Yeah.
Someone, please take it away. Okay. It's good to interrogate these things though and see, okay, well, we're refining our idea of getting clear. Yeah, getting clear. Okay, so, and it's also like another dilemma one I've had is taking what's not given. I can't say it's happened any time recently, but walking down the street and seeing a $50 bill on there, it isn't in a wallet, it has no name, no pack drill. Do you take it and give it to a charity, or do you leave it for the next person to come along who's going to take it and whatever? I'm not saying my intention's any better than theirs.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, do you just say, well, look at that?
Do you think I have to take it to the police station?
Yeah, they
No,
wouldn't.
but you can say where I found it.
Yeah, should somebody come along. I mean, we do that with cards. I mean, I've been saved by somebody taking to the police my cards that dropped one time. But it's interesting, if it's identifiable, it's a different thing. So these are dilemmas. I can think, well, I know I'm going to give it to a charity. I'm not going to say this is now mine. So there's a lot of examples.
Somewhere first, I don't remember the context, but there was some sort of reception
Yeah.
or desk where I could hand it in so that I knew that the person came to.
Okay, yeah, yes, yeah, yeah, but there was something like that. Yeah, they're clear-cut situations. it's like I had that situation where I was at the chemist and got my scripts filled. Then I had my little bag and I went to the public toilets up at the shopping centre. And then I walked out without it, the bag, forgot. And then at some point, not too far distant, I came back and it wasn't there. And I asked, because it was fairly close to the time, I asked a woman coming out of the booth, oh, did you see a bag? Da, 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 da. And I don't know if she told me or someone else said they handed it in to the little office, like you're saying, the counter, and there it was waiting for me. Oh, there's your bag, you know. So I posted on Facebook a photo saying, whoever did that, thank you so much. And, you know, out of any Facebook post, that got the biggest hits. So that act of acknowledgement and thanking is a nice message people love. So, because I was thinking about the $50, I could post and say, I found this right there. If it's yours, you might get everybody saying it's mine, it's mine, it's mine. Yeah. Okay. And as we've discussed before, sexual misconduct, cheating on a partner or with someone who's in a committed relationship, or engaging in non-consensual, generally sex isn't non-consensual. That's all sexual misconduct. And then the opposite of that is being absolutely respectful of every being that exists, particularly in close relationships, family, friends, intimate partners, and so forth, colleagues, whoever we're interacting with, we're just being incredibly calm, respectful of their bodies, respectful of their I can respect others' views. Like I had a situation yesterday in conversation with someone who doesn't hold the same religious views as me. And I'm not about to, and they were like saying, well, no, basically this is the truth. And I'm not going to say, no, it's not, and have a debate with them, because I've only just met them. I mean, maybe somewhere further down the track, we might have a fuller discussion, but maybe not. We've got to bide the time. So, you know, you can be respectful, of course, of others' opinions, of others' views as well. You know, yeah, so respect. So we have talked a little bit about the next one, right? Livelihood in terms of the cattle and this and that, but abandoning a wrong mode of livelihood. So while working within the cattle industry may not be wrong livelihood, question mark, we have to interrogate, but generally one that is clearly stated is being a butcher. Because what do butchers do? They kill beings. So that's pretty clear, right? Being a butcher, dealing in weaponry, arms. You think about that. You think if we didn't have the arms manufacturers, what would happen to all those wars? And whatever, you know, from the, what is it, biological, chemical warfare all the way through to bombs and like the whole plethora and so forth. So that is definitely a wrong livelihood.
Because they're part of that.
Being a member of the armed forces is not necessarily, however, it's really a slippery slope. And why I'm saying that, my nephew, who has Tourette's, was in the army, was not going to be on the front line, even though his Tourette's was very mild. You don't have some Tourette's. Just. But he was in the sort of IT section, but I don't know what his IT was doing. So if your IT is about communications, that's one thing. But if it's about drop the bomb there or whatever,
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, involved in warfare. So, however, also, and just saying this because we have within the Buddhist community, Australian Sangha Association, were approached by defence forces to ensure that there were Buddhist chaplains because they have to cater for all faiths. And they realised they didn't have the Buddhist chaplains. And this has been a conversation for many years. So now we've been involved with that of getting chaplains into place and what's happening. But you think, well, a chaplain is not engaging in warfare. They're engaging in supporting, you know, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and so forth, people personally. So it's a big dilemma in terms of being in the armed forces. I think, I think it would be difficult to be in the armed forces where you're being trained to kill, to justify that. To justify that as a livelihood, because you're being trained to kill. I mean, they do say that most people, like in the army, for example, I don't know about, because, you know, when they're in the Air Force or the Navy, it's sort of like you're generally from distance, you know, dropping bombs or whatever they do, torpedoes. So it's a sort of collective thing. Whereas I heard that in traditional warfare, that a lot of soldiers aim to miss. That a lot aim to miss. Because you just think, to be trained to be a killer of a fellow human being, you have to not see them as a fellow human. So there's a lot of this training to dehumanize the enemy. And I remember saying this, it was quite some time ago, maybe the methods are more sophisticated. It was young US soldiers in training, like they're in their late teens, and being fed this heavy metal music. It's sort of like desensitizing music. So I think being in the armed forces would be difficult. If you could be in the armed forces and say, I'm only going to be involved in helping people on the ground, floods, bushfires and things like this, that happens quite a bit. Sure. Or in the medical section or so forth. But I do believe they all have to train in weaponry anyway. I think everyone gets basic training with weaponry. So you'd have to look at that. You're certainly in an environment where killing happens. So I would also look at, you know, don't want to be involved in that sort of environment. Because then what sort of speech comes, what sort of attitudes come, etc. And I think too, they give people, I remember people protesting against the drugs they were giving them so that they would kill, psychiatric drugs. To whatever. It's pretty serious because you live with the after effects of that. So it's a big dilemma though. What other livelihood do you think would be a wrong mode?
Right.
Oil and gas sector could be. It's similar in terms of what you're actually doing in that sector. Like I had a friend of mine, not oil and gas, but she was working for a big cigarette company, and we were all like, what are you doing with a big cigarette? I mean, she wasn't making the cigarettes and so forth, but you're supporting that. So we have to check up our own ethics. Oh yes, drugs, definitely. Drug dealers, yeah, manufacturers.
Industry in general, I would say it's
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
The lines are very
They are very blurred. So you really have to check up and go, okay, what's the ramifications of this? Also, today we'll probably look at things that weren't around in the Buddha's time. Is it working for an investment company that's unethical investment? Like, we've got so many dilemmas around this, isn't it? That we really have to say, is that right or not? Because it's also like, if I'm supporting that entity, if I'm not willing to support that entity, and more people aren't willing to support it, maybe go out of business. I live in these things.
Struggling.
There was,
We were struggling to obtain.
Yes.
We wanted to hold the land. Gas sector or
Yeah.
like that.
yes,
Very, very.
or to find the information.
Find somebody
Yeah.
to get proof, like.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the main core facts.
Yeah,
I don't think we should try to.
go ethical. Yeah, but you managed to. See, because then you can have joyous effort in,
Otherwise, I can't
yeah, yeah,
enjoy
yeah,
1,000 contracts,
exactly.
so just support
Yeah,
this whole industry.
yeah, wonderful. So when things work out like that, it's great that it can work out. Generally, things are not quite so clear cut. Okay, any other? Anyway, think about the livelihood, modes of livelihood. And of course, the opposite is to earn one's living by a right livelihood. And we'd say not only that it's a right livelihood, but for my mind, is it beneficial, right? So the whole service sector, whichever area of services is beneficial to others, you know, that we're orienting towards being of benefit to others, offering service to others, whether paid or unpaid. But, you know, that can go from food to food services, to medical services, to education, to social work, whatever. We've got so much. I think increasingly that need is there, because look at all the psychological conditions that seem to be increasing at a younger and younger age, and the need for more support systems.
There was a beautiful story just the other day with Catholic Connection, seriously focusing on people who have age and then increase their wage. So
Yes,
it's carried
quite a lot.
by quite a lot, from like $28 or $23 to $32 an hour. And
Right,
they were most joyous,
carers.
and it's great that we see services being recognised now as an economic benefit.
Yes,
As
it's wonderful,
opposed to
isn't
just
it?
making, they've found ways to measure the benefit of services.
Yeah, yeah. So that is a good start, and thinking that you said in the context of aged care, right? Because if you're thinking that, you know, we're increasingly aging population, lasting longer, etc., that is a growth area. And we had the whole Royal Commission on the neglect in the aged care system, and even abuse in the aged care system. So to start to turn around, yeah.
Industries that are not as obvious, like, I was just thinking about options.
Yeah,
On the surface, it's like, okay, it's fine, manufacturing.
Yeah.
Which
exactly. Yeah,
when the
yeah,
throwing away, people throwing away all the food, it's like manufacturing food.
yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah.
all
All of that, and all,
And then also the attachment to the self and looking nice. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't think about that. Like that's that kind of
Well, it's there within that. I guess you can look at it within the fashion industry or makeup industry, beauty industry generally, all of that, where there's a lot about ethical cosmetics and products and so forth. So yeah, it's a huge, vast area. I think this is where the whole fashion industry now is. There's a lot of conversation around that, ethical fashion. At least the conversation's being had, but it doesn't stop. The sweatshops are still producing out, and of course, the less money you have, the more likely you are to buy the cheap and easily available and stuff like that. So it's sort of like a privilege to be able to make ethical decisions, whether as a producer or whether as a consumer. Yeah, there's so much really impact, as you're saying, more and more subtle levels, or non-obvious levels. Having worked in a agency sphere where they have the ethical shops, and that the money was going directly back to the community. Sort of like, well, if you can do that, you feel a bit more at ease with knowing where things are coming from. Yeah.
Sometimes I find that it's like being in a tent or outside the tent. You can be in an industry, like food industry, and there's a lot of meat involved in the food industry. And sometimes when you're like a vegetarian and you're going into a kitchen that's producing lots of meat, I suppose the only thing I can offer in that sense, although I'm working in that kitchen, is that, an understanding that this was an animal. It was a living animal.
Yeah.
And that in a way, by my approach and my communication about that to other people and maybe not thought about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Raises a bit more awareness.
Yeah, it's educating people about yeah.
And then inside, it's like I'm working within that festival, but I'm not discounting my values or myself, but helping to share a view about something that maybe not discussed. Being like in the tent to change. Well,
Yes, yeah.
See.
That's right. Yeah, there's a lot of that. I mean, we had a lot of that discussion in the 70s with the women's movement. Because it'd be like, oh, you're just like if you're in the tent, you're a sellout.
Yeah,
it's just like, well, you can change from within, you can change from without. I mean, both are valid. Yeah. So yes, there is like that. I mean, or like what is it? PETA. Animal welfare group, and within, say, the fashion industry, of making that statement of not wearing animal products and so forth. People who have a position of influence can be that voice. So there's many different layers where we could make a difference. Okay, and then right effort is a sort of effort that finds the ethical loan so that you can sleep at them. No, that you can feel like you're doing the right thing. It's not just sleeping at night. So right effort is making effort in, so this is where coming back to looking at our mind, the non-arising of unwholesome states, negative states of mind, toxic emotions and so forth, which is something we're continually training on, to not arise those negative states of mind if we catch them quickly enough, at least to minimize them, as soon as they arise, to be able to minimize them, to be able to apply an antidote, to relinquish them, so forth. And in general, it says those that haven't arisen, so jealousy hasn't come up, so make sure it doesn't, by always rejoicing. Fantastic, you got to do a retreat, fantastic, you got to go there, fantastic. wonderful. Have a great holiday. We train our minds in the opposite states. And enhancing that increase of wholesome states of mind, the positive states of mind. And this is what we're doing in our Dharma practice. Yeah, tapping into our own innate positive qualities, love, compassion, kindness, generosity, and wisdom. Being around other people who support that. They don't have to even be fellow Dharma practitioners. But if I'm around people who are quite negative over a period of time, may not even be long. It's like we can get sucked into that vortex, can't we? Just like, oh, we get caught up in that conversation. So the more we strengthen the opposite, our positive states of mind, the less likely we get caught up in that.
That was one of the lovely things about yesterday, because everyone was a person of faith, and they thought that ethics was important.
Yeah.
And they had different perspectives, but
Yeah,
it was all
definitely.
good.
Shared values, because ultimately, whatever label we call ourselves, Buddhist, Muslim, Christian, no faith, whatever, indigenous, spiritual being, then ultimately, as we all want the same thing, but then really the values in terms of a way of life are shared. We might have different manifestations of that. Of course, we do have that as Buddhists. We don't want to kill any living being, whereas that's not really across the board. But there is a thing of, at least, of not taking life to some extent. So there's many different manifestations, but I think when people of any faith tradition, spiritual tradition, or have that as a core of their being in the world, come together, it's always a shared conversation. It's always wonderful. Because it's sort of like, yeah, we get this. Yeah, it's wonderful. It was great.
I was privileged being in the room with everyone, not just sharing their story. That was really wonderful.
Yes. And thank you for all your contributions. Yes.
My husband's asked me to thank you as well.
Oh gosh, pressure's on already. Pressure's on already. Well, we did think it was a bit skillful to have the deputy mayor. Wasn't she amazing? So maybe we'll get a grant. I said, we have to get a grant for chairs because we were pulling chairs from, oh my gosh. Yeah, I know. We're like, is there any more chairs we can pull from somewhere? I know. Yeah, we found every conceivable. Anyway, all worked out nicely. Thank you. So that is about, having joyous effort also when we just rejoicing, the fact that we're here, the fact that we're discussing this stuff. We can rejoice about yesterday. We were just rejoicing. Yes, we can do that. And thank you for all the photos. I haven't even got to see them yet. So here we're coming more back into the mind transformation in terms of training our mind like that in joyous effort, taking joy in whatever. And it also says joyous perseverance. Well, I tried that once and it didn't work. No, we have to keep going, keep trying, like finding if I can use the ethical loan thing again, eventually finding the right one. Had to take a lot of effort. So we just persist, yes.
Is it still considered right effort if just sort of diet, mind?
Well, now that you're thinking about it, you can include other beings in that. So we're all progressing, right?
I'm not saying that wasn't.
No. It is a positive motivation, right? Because when you think sleep well at night, it's not just about sleeping well at night, is that you feel this is in line with my ethical values. So that's actually quite good. Yeah. I don't even know if it's about looking after yourself.
I mean, in terms of having.
Well, there is that you feel comfortable in, but I think if you unpack your ethical values, you find that does include here we are in a place. So that even I haven't intentionally stated for the benefit of all beings, if you unpack, well, what is my ethics, it includes, you would say, well, yeah. Okay, so then right mindfulness. So this is really our meditation practice, cultivating. And so here it unpacks the 4 close applications of mindfulness, of the body, of feelings, of mind, everything arising in the mind, and of phenomena. So that's a whole big presentation on the 4 applications of mindfulness. But basically we can say in general, cultivating mindfulness, whether in meditation or whether we're engaging in all these others, in our actions, in our speech, in absolutely everything we think, do, and say, of being mindful of, well, what's the impact of this? And is it in sync with my values, my ethics, my beliefs, and so forth? So that we, in that way, we can practice right mindfulness 24/7. It's living a life of virtue, isn't it? It's living an ethical life. So without unpacking all of those, we have previously done that with the how to meditate. And then right concentration, developing our power of mental engagement and dwelling in different states of meditative absorption. So again, the right concentration comes with, just like with the right mindfulness, I should say, correct mindfulness. As long as Oprah Rinpoche says, even thieves need mindfulness. So the right mindfulness is not that. The right mindfulness is this intentional positivity. Like if I haven't got something good to say, I'll zip the lip. You know, if I haven't got something beneficial to say, why say it? And so forth. But having said I haven't got something beneficial to say, it is beneficial to say, hello, how are you doing? Things like that, or saying the right thing in the appropriate environment, because otherwise you end up like my dinner friends saying that they felt I wasn't interested, whereas I was just probably too self-absorbed, which wasn't a good thing.
Oh no, I'm
Yep, okay.
I mean, I'm hearing you because I'm studying at the moment and I'm an old person in the class, and I hear that, I mean, I ask a question.
Good.
And I thought that question might, you know, get rid of some of the crickets that I hear in the room, meaning that no one asks any questions.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, oh, there are a lot of people here. And they've all got different things to contribute. And here, snippets of, you know, but they're not putting it back in the same. Why?
Yeah. Well, the asking of questions is beneficial to everybody there. Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
that's,
it is.
I ask to get more knowledge.
Yes, of course, and that benefits others. When one person in the room has a question, believe me, other people have the same question. Not to say absolutely everyone, but yeah, they have the same question. And it encourages that sense of not just being in an educational environment, just absorbing stuff non-critically.
Yeah, so hopefully it's encouraging.
Yeah. Sounds good. All right, so we'll leave it there today. We've covered the Eightfold Noble Path, and we've got one more week on this. So I better, yeah, we've still got a little bit to cover, but that's okay. So the dedications on page 8. Kewadi Nyududa Lama Sangye Chukuni Joa Chikyama Lupa De Sala Gopa Sho Chanchu Sencho Grimposhe Make Panam Gekuchi Keba Nyampa Mepa Gongne Gondu Washu. The next page, the prayer for the long life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world. May you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And then this prayer for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious one, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands. Please bestow virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now, holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice. You wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make request, while striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other living beings you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. Long life prayer for Tenzin Oso Rinpoche. Lord of Dharma, who in accordance with the various dispositions of those to be subdued, makes clear in the light of your well-spoken advice the sacred Ganden tradition, essence of Buddha's teachings. Foremost and holy Lama, to you for us supreme, we make this prayer of supplication. Lama, please, please, please. Thanks everybody for all your contributions.